is something Americans consider normal, but people from other countries find it disturbing. Story 1. Health coverage being linked to employment. This job pays like and I hate it. But if I quit, my essential medication won't be covered until I get hired somewhere else, so I can't risk it. Story 2. Not going to the hospital because you're worried about the cost, even with insurance. In Korea, visiting in-laws, and I was hesitant to see a doctor when I was sick. Wife convinced me to go, and it cost $20 for a doctor visit and meds. I was amazed. Story 3. Whenever this topic comes up on Reddit, people outside the US seem disturbed by the garbage disposals in our sinks. That's how I learned they're not a global thing. Story 4. The Pledge of Allegiance in schools. I've heard of so many foreign students being completely bewildered when we all stand up and recite it at the same time. Story 5. The lack of paid parental leave and/or having to go back to work within a handful of weeks of giving birth. Sure, some states have their own programs, but there is nothing federally. Story 6. Maybe not normal, but child beauty pageant is absurd at best, disgusting at worst. I'm so glad my country banned it. Under 13 to 16 is so heavily regulated that they basically don't exist. Story 7. All the thanks for your service, applauding military people on flights, endless token worship of veterans, vets themselves feeling compelled to mention it at every possible opportunity, etc. I've never been anywhere that the people give a rat's whether someone is or has been in the military, which is also a far more common thing in the US anyway, as the main path for poor people to gain an education. Story 8. Pretty much the lack of empathy for your fellow man. Someone's on their deathbed and still being forced to show up for work, and the response to shootings. Story 9. I just learned this from my roommate who was born in Venezuela, lived in a few other countries, Canada, then to the US. He said it's illegal for other counties to advertise prescription medications on TV commercials. He was blown away when everything from ED pills to pregnancy meds, allergies, and everything else in between. It was kind of crazy to think about because that seems like a large part of our commercials. Story 10. When you register to vote in America, you register with the party you support. That registration is visible to the government, and even seems to be visible to others based on media reports I have seen. Even if you never actually vote that way, you are exposing yourself to the abuse of that declaration. No wonder voting suppression is so rampant and apparently easy. Edit responses state it is only the case in 14 or so states. Still weird. Story 11. The incredibly shitty American experience of life in general. I didn't get over to Europe until I was in my early 30s, and even as a relatively well-educated and well-read person who didn't take American propaganda seriously at all, I was blown away by the incredible gap between the average European lifestyle versus the American lifestyle. Top-tier public transit, free or very low-cost, high-quality education through university, free healthcare that's generally at least as good as Americans who actually have health insurance get, tons of really excellent parks and urban green space, excellent biking infrastructure, high-quality grocery stores within walking distance from just about everywhere, tons of holidays every year, gobs of vacation time, various worker protections we never even dreamed of, cops that are mostly not trigger-happy sadists, and actually edible food. Honestly, if every American of every socioeconomic class was given a free weeks-long stay in Europe when they turned 18, people would riot when they got home. Story 12. The appalling state of workers' rights. Just a few examples. Cashiers being not allowed a place to sit, health insurance bound to employers. If you are sick, you have to sacrifice your PTO instead of just getting, well, barely any PTO to begin with. Extremely long working hours. Waiters being essentially dependent on tips. Active union-busting efforts by big corporations, lack of layoff protections. No proper maternity leave. And the concept of paternity leave doesn't even seem to be acknowledged there. No proper rules against employers contacting workers during non-working hours. Story 13. Your weekly working hours, you work so much, and having 2-3 jobs as an adult. I know you have to, so nothing against Americans, but your system is. Story 14. Flag worship, gun worship, political party worship, patriot worship, bombing, other countries, worship, military worship, thinking they're the best country in the world for everything, feed 'em. Story 15. It's been said 100 times in this thread so far, but medical debt, the staggering cost of everything even remotely related to healthcare. I'm only 24, and all my health stuff has cost around 300K. Luckily for all of my worst issues, I had insurance under my father because I had most of my surgeries hospitalizations when I was a minor. I'm still having chronic health issues, but I haven't been able to afford health insurance because said health issues have made me incapable of working. Luckily, my husband makes enough to support us both, and a recent raise is allowing him to put me on health insurance for the low cost of $750 a month. Love it here. Story 16. Overt nationalism. Patriotism. As a German, I felt so uncomfortable when everyone sings the anthem with their hand on their heart, and that it was done so much. Especially at big sport events, it felt so unnecessary and odd. IDK, it's just scary to me with our history to pledge allegiance to a country. My only allegiance is to my own morals. Sure, I'm German and would defend my country, but only if my moral stance agrees with what is happening. We learned that early on in school that no country comes above your own conscience. Ever. Story 17. Living in Japan, I find it so odd that people just do whatever they want in public places without consideration for others. Maybe don't FaceTime in public? Story 18. Paying for an ambulance or really any medical care, giant gaps in toilet cubicles in public bathrooms. Edit also tipping for each drink in a bar. Story 19. Your executive layer of government. They seem to make all the decisions, so why pay 355 politicians to just sit there? Most democratic countries are run by the normal government. Our prime minister sits in parliament and can't make any decisions on his own. Story 20. Threatening a daughter's date with violence is weird as. I get that this might be exaggerated in movies, but I've heard podcast hosts, etc. talk about it protecting their daughters, etc. So I guess there must be some truth to it. Story 21. Not washing your parts after using the bathroom, toilet paper doesn't clean. Oh, and the lack of stalls in the men's restrooms or the huge gaps in the door. Story 22. Going on and on about race. Doesn't matter if they're liberals or conservatives, black or white or whatever. They're unhealthily obsessed with race one way or another. Also, Christian Americans, of whom there is an ungodly amount, shoehorning church and prayers into every part of their life and every conversation. Story 23. U.S. citizens' lack of history knowledge and regurgitating the one-liners they hear online or in the news, i.e. believing that Iran just started enriching uranium this year and suddenly have a fully created nuclear bomb. Then making excuses for Israel's behavior towards neighboring countries. Story 24. The giant gaps in toilet doors. I said this to an American once, an educated guy who wasn't stupid, and he replied, "Well, if there was no gap, you couldn't close them." I pointed to the normal door in the room with no gaps, and he had to sit down and think for a while. I was a teaching assistant and got trapped in a bathroom one day because a student came in and ain't no way I'm going to be able to pee knowing my student was in there and basically had ringside seats to the whole shebang. After that, I just avoided while I was in that building. Story 25. Lack of health care. School shootings. No maternity leave. Hardly any vacation time. Guns that are too easily obtained. News that has been replaced by propaganda quality of food. I swear if Americans would travel more in Europe and see what life could be like, they would transform into a totally different country. Story 26. Male circumcision. There is almost never a medical or hygienical reason for circumcision, yet Americans act like Europeans are crazy for not cutting off parts of their sons' penises. Story 27. Flags. U.S. flags everywhere. I mean, dude, we know what country we're in. No need to remind us every 3 steps. And we get it, you're proud of it, but come on. Story 28. A two-party system democracy. The absolute obsession with race. Excessive amounts of sugar, even in basic food like bread. Imperial system units. The worst thing to comprehend if not born and raised with it. Story 29. You guys have police working at schools. That is insane to me. I don't think I even ever saw a policeman at any school I went to my whole life unless specifically invited to talk about being police. Story 30. Israel worship. Even Germany doesn't do what they do, and apart from some evangelicals internationally, no one is as crazy as USA in general. Acting like chopped off penis skin is the default healthy and needs to be like dads. Not even religious deflection. Saying what founding fathers intended as some argument a la religion. Story 31. The amount of awful additives in their food. I was there in January for 10 days and felt ill every day. I finally understand why so many struggle with their weight and their health. Story 32. I remember when I was a kid and there were Americans in our camp. I was shocked that one of them threw leftover pasta from the pot directly into the bin. We never threw food out unless it was spoiled. As for pasta, you can fry it in a pan and add an egg if you like, and it makes a tasty meal. Story 33. All the salute the flag stuff. Medically unnecessary circumcision. User pays healthcare. Being very work culture oriented. All the school shootings. All the gun culture in general. Classifying eggs as dairy products. Industrial scale feedlot meat farming. Refusing to use the metric system. Calling poo duty duty. Calling a grandma Meemaw. Calling a pizza a pie. Starbucks. Butyric acid in chocolate. Really big drinks. Gas-guzzling big vehicles, using clothes dryers because it takes too long to line dry washing, eating off disposable plates for convenience i.e., not due to a mental or physical disability, declawing cats, cropping pit bulls' ears, arming police like the military, not saying all Americans are like this or would consider all this normal, take with foreigner-sized grain of salt. Story 34. Lack of universal healthcare, the unfettered access to guns, the weird obsession with the lives of others. Edited to add tipping. I remember when it was 10 for shitty service, 15 for excellent service. Now it's 25 whether they brought your order or not. Pay the servers a living wage. Story 35. Circumcising baby boys where it isn't done for religious or medical purposes. As an outsider, I don't think it should be so common or socially acceptable. Story 36. Apparently, not wanting to die from heat stroke, iced drinks, and air condition, I read a post about German nurses in a maternity ward freaking about an AC cause of bad air, like it was 1066, and miasma was a thing. Story 37. Oh, there is so much. Where should I start? Being okay with the healthcare system. Being okay with the premise live to work, not work to live. The way many think a bunch of breasts is worse than a scene where someone is killed. Weapons to sell at Walmart. The education system lag of media literacy and knowledge of other countries. Parents can name their kid any weird combination of letters they want. Corn syrup everywhere. The denial of the fact that the U.S. is a country of immigrants and the true natives were Native Americans. Christian religion is at times bordering on zealotry, and cults, or in secluded areas, turns into a full-on sect. The train system. The general want to be best at everything, treating animals in national parks as pets. Edited to add. The lax treatment of the Nazi regime. Pledging allegiance to the flag. Tipping culture. Water plumbing system. Building houses made out of paper. Air venting. Eggs having to be washed, which makes them lose their natural protection against bacteria. No trash separation. The lag of proper education for police force, especially the psychological area. Prison is not a way back into society reintegration, but a punishment. Only having two political parties, a felon and rapist, can become president. Measurement system Fahrenheit, inches, miles, etc. Way to write a date. The DD, or separating decimals with a point and thousands with a comma, while everyone else is doing it the other way around. There is so much more, but that is all I could think of. Story 38. The weird deification of your founders. The amount of American political discourse around what the founders intended is just pure weird. They died over 180 years ago. Why should their intentions matter today? Story 39. Terrible healthcare system, student loan debt, restaurant staff having to live off tips, popularity of circumcision, calling someone who played video games at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, a hero just because they wore camo while they did it. Story 40. Smiling. In America, it's a friendly gesture or a sign of happiness, but in Russia, it's considered an intimidation gesture. The only time you can smile is when you laugh with someone you know or on a call. Story 41. Massive SUV pickup trucks being driven in the center of cities. Being able to get a driver's license without any formal training and with a laughable practical test. Story 42. That they are the center of the universe and Earth. They are not taught in school to be worldly or global citizens. They are taught to look out for themselves first. I think this is the root of a lot of their problems we are seeing manifest today. Story 43. People who have never left their city, let alone country, claiming that it's the greatest place on Earth. Really? Greater than a place where you don't have to worry about health problems? Greater than a place you can get all the education you want, regardless of your wealth or status? Greater than a place that values all work that needs to be done by ensuring those workers can earn a wage sufficient to live a comfortable life, even if that work is considered entry-level or low skill? It seems to me the self-proclaimed greatest country on earth has a lot of issues other countries don't seem to have, and the complete lack of self-awareness is boggling. Story 44. Abstinence-only education. It's been proven it doesn't work, and the states that do it have higher teen pregnancy too. If they're so against abortion, they should help reduce pregnancies caused by lack of education. In my country, I was learning about contraception in an age-appropriate way by grade 6. Story 45. Child marriage. Legal in all but 14 states. All over. Silent state-sponsored pedophiles. Most Americans don't even know this, I don't think. 2 states, I think, don't even have a lower limit for marriage. Disgusting. Story 46. Peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. I have literally made family members and colleagues gag with my PBJ. Now I only have them when I'm home alone. Or with other Americans. Story 47. Only 40 hours of paid vacation a year. I went on a trip with friends from England and told them I could only stay a week because that was my only vacation time and it was like I had horns. They just couldn't believe it. Story 48. I remember my mother's friend from Canada once got annoyed because my mother was serving tea in the forest. Typical single tea bag in a cup of hot water fashion. She said, "It's wasteful. If you make tea in a pot instead, you can have a single tea bag stretched to make as many as 10 cups of tea." Story 49. Driving with 16, buying ALC with 21, is one of them. I'm actually okay with it, but it's just weird where to draw the line, but your elections show that most of the times. Story 50. When you go to buy things in any North American city, including Canada, you do not include taxes on the little price tag. This makes no sense to me. Provinces and states are gigantic, and they know exactly what the price is going to be, but instead, it's added after the fact. Why? Story 51. The multi-million-dollar mansions the preachers live in and the worship celebrity status they have. I'm not a Christian, but even I know that that's against the Bible and just utter insanity. Story 52. Nonsense units like miles, foot, yard, inch, gallons, ounces, bathtubs per clowns. Only 2 big parties. You have more choices. The common idiocracy of thinking it's the best country, even though it's worse than France. Story 53. Ice in drinks. Whole home air conditioning. Sugar in everything. Expensive food with lack of decent regulation. Zoning laws separating businesses from neighborhoods. Huge cars and huge roads. Potholes and constant road construction. Propaganda and nationalism affecting history books. Lower educational standards and lack of countrywide requirements. Medical debt and for-profit healthcare being the only healthcare. Tipping culture, how loud everyone is. Extreme individualism that segregates the person from overarching society. In-sync disposals, not recycling. Having only 2 main political parties. No sick days, no medical leave, etc. at most jobs. No vacation. Never leaving the country. Lack of common sense. I could keep going, but these are just what I've noticed as a new expat. Story 54. That the popular vote doesn't matter in our democracy. The leader is decided by a panel of 218 individuals that represent their states. The amount of reps in the Electoral College also varies depending on state's population. Story 55. Americans think universal healthcare is socialist communistival. We think they are slaves to late-stage capitalism. Same with healthcare being linked to a job. And honestly, their food standards are insane. Do they not have food health safety regulations? Story 56. The odd dichotomy between both praising veterans and making sure to mention this wherever you go, and the poor treatment and support of said veterans. Story 57. I'm not sure if disturbing is the word I would use, but I find the concept of fraternities, sororities, Greek life very strange. Seems almost like a gang mentality, and the stereotypes of assault and hazing doesn't help the image in that regard. Story 58. As a Midwestern American, it would probably be just striking up random, sometimes meaningful conversations with random people. Servers, cashiers, cooks, receptionists, other customers, random people on the street, etc. I know plenty of other cultures' countries trend towards mind-your-own-thing business unless we're friends family. Story 59. School shootings. Prisons housing 10K prisoners. A 60 school dropout rate 80 in Native communities. Glorifying people who lost the war. Crippling medical debt you're not supposed to pay because it's a tax write-off for the hospital. Story 60, Smiling at Strangers, perfectly captures that cultural disconnect. What feels warm and welcoming in the US can come off as suspicious or overly familiar elsewhere. Story 61, Craft Singles. Plastic American cheese terrifies me. Now I can with the deli-style American cheese, but the chemical wax just like I don't get how my fellow Americans can eat it. Or cheese in a can. Or, yeah, a lot of mine are about cheese. Story 62. I was horrified to learn that insurance companies can practice medicine in the US. I thought your health insurance meant that you pick any healthcare provider and that you had a deductible of like $500, then it would be free for a period of time. The healthcare provider just billed the insurance company and that was that. I was horrified to learn the truth. Story 63. That you heat water for tea in the microwave or on the stove. We just use the jug. Or electric kettle, or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, put water in push button, wait 2 minutes, pour boiling water out. Story 64. Having an obviously dysfunctional democratic system with basically only two parties, lobbying practices that would be considered illegal corruption in most places, and still insisting American democracy is the best in the world. Story 65. A lack of understanding basic history. I mean, what is taught is extremely biased. It's so disgusting. Americans are also so willfully stupid. To any American who reads this, understand if you truly believe your country is without fault. If you justify, refuse to acknowledge, or just plan, accept the wrongdoings of your nation, you are not a patriot. You are a nationalist, and that makes you the bad guy. History is one of the most important subjects a person can learn, and American schools oversimplify and/or teach it completely wrong. It's not surprising Americans believe the load of BS that is the greatest nation in the world. What a joke of a country. Story 66. No paid parental leave, vacation sick leave, clipping dog ears, docking the tails, student debt, no universal health care, no obligatory personal IDs? How is voting even valid in that country? Having guns. And how common circumcision is. The car culture, no public transport. How important HS college sport is? The stupid sponge toast bread. Corn syrup instead of sugar. Credit cards as a normal day-to-day payment method for everything. Story 67, Gun culture. I live in a country where guns not coveted by the vast majority of society. Sure, they are important for managing farms, but firearms certainly didn't inhabit thoughts, culture, media. Their ownership and myriad range of accessories are not discussed or seen advertising. I don't know any annual events, not famous shooting competitions. Gun ranges are rare and far between. Gun crime is rare. Thought we did have a single gun death last week. That was quite unusual. I just don't think about guns, really.